Hey everybody, it's GauntletX, and welcome back to some more Magic Arena, and today we're going to be playing another quick draft of Khans of Tarkir. Without further ado, let's get into the Pack 1 Pick 1. We've got two main cards competing here, Villainous Wealth and Mystic Monastery. So, the Villainous Wealth is probably the strongest card in the pack, but it is by far the most narrow. Not only do you have to play specifically Sultai, so black, green, blue, but you also need to be playing a deck that can afford a 8 or 9 mana win condition, so you need to be able to grind out the game well and survive against more aggressive strategies. So super narrow, but incredibly powerful in any game where you can cast this where X equals 6+. So really cool card, but very narrow one. Or we've got Mystic Monastery, which is just excellent mana fixing because it's going to be a dual land for your Temur decks or your Mardu decks, and it's going to get all 3 of your colors in your Jeskai decks. So this helps mana fix you in 3 of the 5 different color trios in this format. So it's super flexible fixing. So I'm going to go for the Mystic Monastery over the Villainous Wealth. I just have had some games where I've played against more aggressive decks and the Wealth has been an issue trying to get to that high of a mana cost. And especially because it was during an Arena Open event, it did feel extra rough. So just some bad memories with the card. Probably still potentially incorrect to not just take it here, but that's okay. I've spent my time with Villainous Wealth. Let's do some other archetypes, some other strategies here with the Mystic Monastery to start things off. Alright, and I don't know if this is correct, but I've had incredible experiences with Arc Lightning the vast majority of the time. Really easy to get this to kill 2 cards in this format with so many 2 toughness creatures, like Morph cards that are 2/2s, and there's plenty of 1 toughness cards as well. Most 2-drops in the format are 2/1s, and there's plenty of playable 1 toughness creatures like that. So Arc Lightning can relatively often kill 2 creatures with 1 spell and give you a 2-for-1, which is insane. But even when it just kills 1 creature, it's perfectly serviceable removal because it's pretty cheap. So big fan of the Arc Lightning, but Master the Way is also a really nice option, because this is going to be a removal spell that also draws you a card to guarantee that it's kind of always a 2-for-1, because you're always going to shoot something that'll die to it and draw an additional card, whereas the Arc Lightning is just sometimes a 2-for-1. But if you live in magical Christmas land, and it is Christmas today, you could get a 3-for-1 with the Arc Lightning. I have done it once before, and it was literally yesterday, so we'll go for the Arc Lightning here. See if we get to live in magical Christmas land on Christmas. For pick 3 now, if we want to go Temur, so blue, red, green, we can take a Tuskguard Captain or a Thornwood Falls. I think if I want to go Temur, I'd rather take the Thornwood Falls, since Tuskguard Captain does really want to have other creatures with +1/+1 counters on them to be good, and that's only going to be particularly consistent in Abzan. That is the color trio that can put counters all over the board. So I wouldn't take this super highly unless you're close to being an Abzan. There's also Abzan Guide, which I think is the strongest card in the pack. A 4/4 lifelinker just plays incredibly well in this format. It can completely turn games around and stabilize you against more aggressive strategies and win any race pretty much. So big fan of that card, but it's pretty far from Arc Lightning Mystic Monastery. The Monastery doesn't help us at all with white, black, green. And obviously Arc Lightning is a 4th color outside of white, black, and green. There is a Raiders Spoilers if we want to go to Mardu. I don't know why I always call it Raiders Spoilers. I don't know. Brain malfunctions and everything. But red, white, black Mardu does have a lot of warriors, and this is going to buff every creature you have if you have any of the token production in the format to make your board state really wide. So I've played against this card a lot more than I've cast it myself. I don't think I've ever drafted it yet, but it has been consistently decent for our opponents. We've seen the big flaw with it where we've had opponents top deck this in a top deck war where they only have 1 creature on board, and it just doesn't really do anything at all at that point. But we've also seen it when our opponent has 3 creatures on board or a flying warrior on board, and it can take over the game sometimes with those board states. So Raiders Spoilers, I did it again. Raiders Spoils towards Mardu, or Tuskguard Captain or Thornwood Falls towards Temur. I would rather take the Thornwood Falls though again, because I don't think we'll have a bunch of +1/+1 counter synergies there. I think I'm going to push towards Temur. I don't know why. I just really don't like the potential downsides of cards like Raider Spoils, where they're pretty bad when you draw them at the wrong time. So I'm just going to start diving into Teamer and see if that works out for us, and it does with our pick 4. That's pretty lucky, seeing the best card in the pack being Bear's Companion here. 6 power and toughness for 5 mana spread amongst 2 creatures, which is arguably better than it just being a 5 mana 6/6, because then all your eggs are not in one basket. If your opponent has the removal spell for the 4/4, you've still got a 2/2 body left behind, and you get a nice little 2-for-1 there. So, big fan of Bear's Companion, and I will take that over primarily Savage Punch. But Glacial Stalker is also pretty impressive for that morph cost. I think that's the best morph in this pack. That's really the only competition. Maybe a Windscarred Crag towards Jeskai fixing, but happy to take Bear's Companion. Not a ton here in pick 5. Mardu Rough Rider is one of the weaker 3-color uncommons. We've got an Efreet Weapon Master, which is a solid morph to flip up, but it is in Jeskai rather than Teamer. Or we could just take more fixing in Teamer with the Swiftwater Cliffs. I think I'll just go for the Swiftwater Cliffs here. Pick 6 now, we've got the Mystic of the Hidden Way to break through some board stalls and keep getting in for unblockable damage. We've got the Mardu War Shrieker, which is great at just dumping your hand out really quickly. Synergizes super well with Morphs, because then you'll always have a 3-mana 2/2 in your hand to drop off of this raid trigger. And then there's just more fixing, Swiftwater Cliffs and Thornwood Falls here. Don't know how highly the bots take mana fixing, but it looks like definitely less highly than players in general. So you probably don't need to take the dual lands as highly as I'm taking them here today, because I am drafting as if this were a premier traditional draft, because I don't know how highly the bots take everything here, but I think I'm still just going to take more fixing. If we take Swiftwater Cliffs here, this is going to work great for us in Jeskai or Teamer. And right now we have 2 red spells right now and a Jeskai Triome. So the Swiftwater Cliffs is more likely to be good for us than Thornwood Falls, where this will only be good in Teamer or Sultai, and I highly doubt we get pushed into Sultai here. But there is a chance, not a super high one, but a chance we get pushed into Jeskai, where Swiftwater Cliffs will be much better. Pick 7 now, we have one of the best morphs in the format, Woolly Loxodon, that turns into an absolute finisher once you hit 6 mana, or we've got the Jeskai Elder, which is really good with that prowess ability, turning it into a 2/3 during combat, so it can attack into morphs super well, and it's got a great triggered ability whenever you deal combat damage to your opponent, so big fan of Jeskai Elder or Woolly Loxodon. I think they're both great. The issue is they're both going to be great in very different decks. I think the Woolly Loxodon would be better to just our Teamer beef pile, whereas the Jeskai Elder would be much better if we get pushed into Jeskai. I think I'm just going to stick on Teamer unless something really weird happens, and we take the Woolly Loxodon, we go for the beef Bear's Companion into Loxodon later, go for a bunch of cheap removal like Arc Lightnings and Force Aways to stay alive till then. Seems like a solid place to be. Pick 8 here, we have mainly Glacial Stalker for a nice beefy morph to flip up, or we've got an Alpine Grizzly, which synergizes really well with the cards that care about having a creature with power 4 or greater. This is the cheapest one you can get. The best card to pair with this is Savage Punch that we saw earlier. Didn't mention in that pack because there were some better cards, but Savage Punch is a 2-mana sorcery. If you have a creature with power 4 or greater, you get to give a creature +2/+2 and then have it fight something. So with Savage Punch, you can clear the board and get a ton of damage in with an Alpine Grizzly. And I think that synergy is just powerful enough to make the Alpine Grizzly pretty sweet, because they are both common, so you can usually get them both together. So we'll take the Grizzly here as we move on to pick number 9, which is going to be pretty monumentally filler no matter what we take. Really don't love a 2 toughness 5 mana card. I really don't like the banners much in this format when there's so many 3 mana things to play. It's hard to justify dropping a mana rock instead. Scaldkin's just pretty inefficient, and then Shatter and Erase are way too narrow. Same with Tomb of the Spirit Dragon, which theoretically can gain you life for each morph you control that's face down, but just not worth it in a 3-color format. I'm still going to draft it just because it's the highest rarity card, but that's because I'm just drafting for collection purposes and vault progress here. Yeah, looks like you can get your lands super late in these quick drafts, as we get a pick 10, Rugged Highlands. Although this is an allied colored duel, being red and green, that means it fits into only one of the 3-color clans. So maybe this just means there's no bots playing Temur. If this were an enemy colored duel, that would mean that the bots are definitely not taking the lands very highly at all, because the duels like Swiftwater Cliffs, this goes into Temur or Jeskai. Thornwood Falls, this goes into Temur or Sultai. But again, the allied colors like Rugged Highlands only goes into 1/3 color pair. So maybe not a massive sign that that duels are getting taken too low by the bots, but generally ending up with this many lands in just a 3-color pair after pack 1 isn't something that's going to happen in a player draft. I am really not a fan of Embodiment of Spring. It is mana fixing / mana ramp, but you have to hit 2 of your 3 main colors before you use it. Could be okay if you're doing some kind of 5-color nonsense with blue and green as the most prevalent colors, but in a 3-color deck like Temur, then you have to have 2 of your 3 colors to pick up your 3rd color in the first place, so I don't know, it's just kind of awkward. I'd rather just take a Summit Prowler for another random 4-power creature if we pick up some Savage Punches. Pick 12, take a Wetland Sandbar, just a filler 2-drop creature, but sometimes it can play fine if you don't have other 2-mana creatures, because there's, again, so many 3-mana 2/2s and 4/2s and stuff, so this can often trade into 3-mana creatures, so you can chip in for a little damage with it. Would be completely unplayable in most other formats, but I think the Sandbar is fine here. It's definitely not good. It's definitely filler, but it can work out. And speaking of things that work out, Pack 2, Pick 1, things have worked out very well for us because we've opened up a bomb rare in our clan. The Sagu Mauler is an excellent Temur rare. Just in green-blue, but it's a massive, massive threat. A 6/6 trample hexproof. Hexproof is a really gross ability they've stopped printing very often because of how gross it is. They've kind of replaced it by ward, but the fact that you can do whatever you want to this card, so you can protect it with your own combat tricks and whatever, but your opponent can't use any targeted removal on it, is really, really nasty. And yeah, I mean, you could like play this early and flip it up as a morph, try to get them to spend a removal spell on your morph card, and then oops, I eat your removal spell, but that is kind of risky. I think most of the time it's probably best to just drop this turn 6 so that it's not under any risk, because you don't want to just like slam this down turn 3 and then have it die to a debilitating injury or an arced lightning or one of those cheap removal spells. Anyways, that minor gripe aside, where you probably don't want to morph it too often, it's still an absolutely nuts card and easily the pick. And now for Pack 2, Pick 2, we've got an excellent 2-drop creature. This is way better than Wetland Sandbar. It's already a 2/2 for 2 instead of a 2/1 for 2, but it's also got Death Touch, so it will always trade profitably later in the game. It's also got a Ferocious trigger, where if we curve out with this into an Alpine Grizzly or a Summit Prowler or something, then this can attack in as a 3/3 and get extra damage in. Just a lot of great abilities. They're all just like moderately solid, but you stack them all together and the card becomes pretty excellent for its mana cost. Happy to take Error of the Wilds. Pack 2, Pick 3, another easy pick here. We've got a great morph card with Mistfire Weaver, which we can flip up, give something hexproof, save it from a removal spell, but also flyers play well enough in the format that just jamming this out on turn 4 is sometimes the best thing to do. I had a game in another kind of, I think it was Jeskai that time around, like blue, red, white. But I had a game where I just wanted to play one of these turn 4 and one of these turn 5 and just hit for like 6 in the sky over the course of a couple turns. And that absolutely won the game because just evasive threats played really well. So don't really have to morph it for it to be good just because flyers play so well. But if you do get to morph it and flip it up, then it's going to be excellent. It is just a lot of mana to do that. 3 mana to play, 3 mana to flip later. But it can definitely be worth it when you get to counter a removal spell, so happy to take the Mistfire Weaver. Pick 4, we have Monastery Swift Spear competing with a Force Away. I think most decks probably want the Monastery Swift Spear instead of the Force Away, but this kind of Temur deck where we have a lot of really good top end, don't think we really care about hasting in for early damage. We're not going to have any raid cards. That is the Mardu mechanic that wants you to have attacked with a creature this turn. So like Monastery Swift Spear, definitely the better card if you're in Mardu or if you're in Jeskai, because those can be pretty aggressive decks, and Jeskai can really utilize that prowess well. But since we're Teamer and we're trying to survive long enough to cast gigantic 6/6 hexproofs and play and flip some morphs and drop 6/7s down, big stuff like that, having just a nice cheap way to slow your opponent down with the Force Away feels like the better card to have in the early game. So I'm actually going to take Force Away over Swift Spear, and I think these cards are both excellent, but Force Away is just a little better for our kind of strategy. Pick 5, we've got a bunch of cards that are probably not going to make the cut. Aerialists is okay if you have nothing else to do at the top end, but we've got plenty of other stuff to do being in Teamer. I guess right now it's just Bear's Companion, Sagu Mauler, and Woolly Loxodon for top end, but I think we can find better top end than the Aerialist. We've got Crippling Chill, which is a fine tempo play, but I prefer it in more aggressive decks like Jeskai in particular, where you get the prowess triggers going off with this as well. And then we have Disdainful Stroke, which is a little bit narrow, but being able to counter a very high mana value spell for only 2 mana does put you up pretty well in tempo, trading 2 mana for, again, a 4 mana or greater spell. So that would be fine. We could also take this Warden of the Eye, which is probably the least likely to make the cut, because we would need to end up with really good fixing, but it would be the highest upside if it does, because it's a very nice enter the battlefield effect. Yeah, I don't think any of these are particularly likely to make the cut. Crippling Chill's probably the most, but I don't think our deck improves that much with any of these other cards, so I'll speculate towards a Warden of the Eye. If we get like another Mystic Monastery or some random blue-white, green-white, those kind of duels, we could splash it in pretty easily. Pick number 6 looks like nothing playable for us. I guess I'll take a Dead Drop because it's by far the best card in this pack, and similar to the Warden of the Eye, it's an incredible card that if we find some random black fixing, might be worth splashing in. Been very, very impressed by this card. If you want to see it in action doing some wild stuff, definitely check out the first quick draft of the format that I've played. Disappointing pack here because there is a pretty incredible card, but it's very far off from what we're doing in Teamer. We are not a Chief of the Edge deck here, so we have to take Summit Prowler, Weapon Master, or a Disdainful Stroke. I'll go for the Weapon Master here. If I end up doing the White Splash, I do like flipping this thing up. It's got a lot of combat trick potential, being a first striker to eat one of their attacking or blocking creatures, plus you get the +3/+0, which can help you win another combat, so I think Weapon Master's a pretty great morph to flip up later. And speaking of morphs that are great to flip up, that's a Snowhorn Rider, which is perfectly on color to our main clan, our main trio of colors. Very easy Snowhorn Rider, but I have been blown out by Dragon Scale Boon before, interestingly enough, so that might not be a terrible card either. Pick 9, we've got a Crippling Chill, which is fine. A Barrage of Boulders that's a lot more narrow, but it can just win you the game. You just shut off blocks for the turn if you have something big. So it's nothing but a finisher, but wins a board stall. I feel like we're probably going to do okay in board stalls because our creatures are likely just going to be bigger. With a Mauler and a Snowhorn Rider and a Woolly Loxodon now. So I'll take the Crippling Chill that's better in more positions. Pick 10, I guess we just grab an Inoc Tracker here over a Summit Prowler, because we've got enough morphs now that having a wider variety of options to flip up is probably pretty good. Pick 11, we can grab these Summit Prowlers nice and late anyway. Get another Blinding Spray, but I don't think this is the kind of deck that really wants that. Get that River Wheel Aerialists for the top end if we still need it, but I don't think we do. And we'll see what we get to finish this deck up or wrap this deck up with in pack number 3. So we've got a Rugged Highlands or a Woolly Loxodon. We've also got a Windswept Heath if we want some white fixing, but that would require putting a Plains in our deck, which is definitely a downside. The best way to try to splash in a random off-color card like Warden of the Eye is to get enough dual lands that every single land in your deck still hits one of your 3 main colors, right? If you have enough duels to where you have green-white duels and blue-white duels and red-white duels, you can have 3 or 4 white sources in your deck without actually cutting any green, blue, or red sources, and that's where you really want to be. If I play a Windswept Heath, then I have to play an actual Plains in this deck, which means I could draw land that doesn't actually help me cast any of the main cards in the deck, so I'd rather just take a Woolly Loxodon here, I think. Oh, there is a Mystic as well, and a Force Away. Hold up. There's some other absolute gas here, but I really like the Loxodon. I love that massive beef for the top end, so I will take that. We're late enough in the draft now. We want to take a good peek at our mana curve and our interaction. For now, we'll go ahead and look at just Temur, but we'll keep in mind that we can be splashing in a little bit of white or black if we get the fixing to do it. So let's make a pile of our non-creature spells up here. I think we are definitely looking for more removal and interaction, so I think Savage Punch looks very legitimate here. Temur Charger would be good. It gives us a really nice 2-drop to play to keep things aggressive, and we don't have a lot of those. But currently we have like one removal spell, just an Arc Lightning. Other than that, we're stunning creatures or bouncing creatures. No ways to permanently deal with them, so I think Savage Punch should play pretty well in this deck. We've got plenty of beefy creatures to use this with, so I will take the Savage Punch over primarily Temur Charger, but incremental growth can also be pretty good, buffing your board quite a lot. It's just a little bit narrow. You have to have 3 creatures on your board to get the maximum value out of this. Otherwise, you actually have to give a +1/+1 counter to one of your opponent's creatures. Like if you have 1 creature on your board, this is completely uncastable, because then you have to buff 2 of your opponent's creatures. If you have 2 creatures on your board, it's awkward and really not worth the mana cost. So it's narrow enough that it's not as powerful as I initially thought. And it definitely falls in the pick order for that reason. So I'm going to grab the Savage Punch here. Nothing great when it comes to creatures in this pack. Portaling Outburst is solid for getting a super wide board state, but that's better for your like Mardu aggro decks. Temur is a lot more about getting just beef at the top end. Outburst would still be good here, but I think I'm a little happier to just take an Arrow Storm and get more great removal/interaction. This can also be a finisher if we get our opponent down to 4 or 5 life. So I like the Arrow Storm. Force Away is also good. Arrow Storm, Force Away, Portaling Outburst are great. Roar of Challenge and Smoke Teller are also options. Smoke Teller just because we don't have a lot of 2-drop creatures, and Roar of Challenge is another one of those kind of narrow sort of finishers where it can make sure you get the rest of your board in. But I think it's narrow enough to just prefer Arrow Storm as a finisher/removal spell. Really not a lot here. Pick 4, there's another Morph or that super narrow Barrage of Boulders. I'd rather just take another Morph. Spell Strike's super unplayable. This format is slow enough. People will get to 6 mana where this is less than a 1-for-1. Right? You use it and you 1-for-1 by like basically killing their creature by spending your 1 card. So that's a 1-for-1 right there. But as soon as they untap that creature, you're just down in value so bad. So I think Singing Bell Strike is just unplayable. Even though it kind of looks like removal, it's just not good enough. Pick 5, we've got another Summit Prowler if we want to just make our Savage Punch super consistent. I could also take the Bloodfell Caves for the dead drop splash, but I think I'm just going to end up sticking to pure Temur in the end. We'll take the Summit Prowler here. Pack 3, pick 6. How many morphs do we have for the secret plans? You certainly want a lot of them. This fits into our curve pretty well. The biggest issue with this card is it's a super bad top deck late game, because then you just spend 2 mana to do nothing with your non-creature spell. We do actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 morphs. 7, actually. We count the Mistfire Weaver. 7's pretty decent. You probably want like 10 for secret plans to be super ideal. So I could splash in the Weapon Master off of the Mystic Monastery, but it's not very consistent for actually flipping it up. Yeah, I don't know if we're gonna get to 10 like good playable morphs, because the other thing is like Sagumal, even if I have a secret plans on board, I really don't want to actually play that face down. I feel like Smoke Teller is just more likely to make the cut, just another 2 mana 2/2 on curve. Because secret plans can be awkward when you don't have enough morphs for it. So this is a really fun card to take like pack 1, pick 1, and make sure you have like more than 10 morphs in your deck by the end of the draft. This late with like 6 morphs, I just don't know if I can justify it. Yeah, we'll just go for the boring little Smoke Teller here. Get another boring little Smoke Teller, and now we get to cut the Wetland Sandbar. We've got 3 2-drops without it. I'm not going to play another Aerialists, and I'm certainly not playing a Banner if I can avoid it. And with these lands, we can definitely avoid playing a banner. Well, we got another Morph now, a Snowhorn Rider, but obviously too late to take the secret plans, and this would just be the 8th Morph anyway. Still doesn't get us to like 10 plus, where I'd really like to be. Pick 9. I guess Swift Kick could work in our deck, because we've got a lot of beef, but not exciting. I'm not going to end up playing any of these. I guess we'll just put the Swift Kick in the side. Now we get a Highland game, which is just strictly better than Wetland Sandbar. It's a Wetland Sandbar that gains life when it dies. So probably cut that, but I guess we'll do that when we get into the deck building. A whole lot of nothing here. I'm going to hold down the Alt key and see. All right, I just own all of these cards already, so it doesn't matter what we take here. If you're ever interested in rare drafting yourself or drafting for collection purposes, you just hold down the Alt key and it'll tell you exactly how many you own of everything during the draft. I imagine on Mac it's holding down the Options key, because I think that is usually the equivalent of the Alt key. And I don't think you can do it on mobile, which is a bit sad, because it is a very nice little feature they've added in. Anyways, we've taken enough lands here and cut enough filler already that we don't need to do much when it comes to deck building. We just cut 3 cards out of this deck. So it should be a pretty simple deck build today. Wetland Sandbar is our most dirtily creature. Obviously the Prowlers are dirtily as well, but with a Savage Punch they have some uses. And we've got so many 3-mana creatures by virtue of having a ton of Morphs that being able to go like 3-drop into 4-drop is decent. Even if, again, these are just pure vanilla, so they don't really do anything. It is really cool that these are like the only cards on Arena we actually get to see their flavor text. Everything else we have to highlight the card and look at the tiny little text right underneath the explanation of Morph there. So I kind of miss vanilla cards just because I miss flavor text. I like flavor text a lot in Paper Magic the Gathering, and the fact that they just don't put it on the Arena cards, even when you zoom in on them, is a little disappointing to me. I don't like having to look at the extra blurb at the top right of all the cards to read the flavor. So I don't know the flavor text on like any of the cards that have come out in the last couple of years because I just draft so much on Arena over anything else, which is kind of sad. I kind of miss it. I love flavor text. It's cool. It's fun. It's interesting. Anyways, that whole tangent out of the way. Let's cut the Wetland Sandbar to start. And what is the creature to non-creature count? 18 to 7. Definitely cut one of these Blinding Sprays, I think, as the non-creature card that we cut. It's just so much mana. Yeah, you can manufacture some board states where it plays very well, but for that much of a mana investment, it's not consistently very good. So we'll cut a Blinding Spray. Actually, this is probably an 18-land deck, right? Because these are Morphs we want to flip up at 6 mana. We want to flip these up at 5. So we kind of have like this many 5 and 6 drops and this many 3 drops. So hitting 5 mana turn 5 is pretty big, so 18 lands I think is actually reasonable for this kind of deck. So I'll actually cut double Blinding Spray, and then 1 creature, and we'll be on the very average, very general 17 creature deck here, just with 18 lands. Kind of want to cut one of the Inoc trackers. Without the secret plans, I really don't think I need this many Morphs, and I guess we do end up randomly running just a giant flying finisher dork. It's fine, it is what it is. Just some beef in the sky. Sure, seems okay to me. We'll cut one of these Inoc trackers. I think this is the weakest of our Morphs, and we have a lot of Morphs right now. So goodbye Inoc tracker, and hello 18th land. What is that 18th land gonna be though? 12 green cards, 9 red, and 8 blue. Usually you do want to take a peek at how many Morphs you have in each color as well, because those Morphs you're not going to need their color of mana for that card to do something. But I'm feeling a little lazy today. I'm probably just going to go by the average numbers, because our mana base should be good enough that if we play a slightly incorrect build in terms of mana, we should still be fine, because we'll have plenty sources of each color. So 12 green, 9 red, 8 blue. So green followed by red and blue are pretty equivalent, right? Yeah, so probably just like 1 more green source than blue and red, something like that. 6, 7, 8 green sources right now. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 red sources. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 blue sources. So 9, 7, 7, I guess. Throw in another forest. Seems more than good enough to me. 977 sounds pretty consistent. I guess I've got 2 double red cards with the double Summit Prowler and a double red card with the Arrow Storm. So, yeah, and looking at the blue, outside of our non-creature spells, which we don't have to cast on curve, it's almost all morphs, right? Snowhorn way at the top, Mistfire Weaver way at the top, because we're morphing those turn 5, basically. So actually, I kind of like going 8-8-7 instead. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 red sources. That makes hitting double red for the 3 Summit Prowlers and the 1 Arrow Storm a lot more consistent. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 blue. I guess we could still go like 9, 9, 8, 6 here. Cut a blue source. Because again, I don't need blue till like turn 5. I'm actually going to cut a blue source and put in the 9th green still. Because that is just such the main color to this deck. But yeah, I guess in the end I did look at the morphs, because the fact that all of our early blue plays are instants that we can play later in the game to good effect. And morphs means that we really don't need the blue mana till late in the game, like turn 5 and onward, so we can cut down to like 6 sources of the color. So, alright, we did actually take the advice and look through the morphs to see when we need the blue. And yeah, 9, 8, 7 seems, or 9, 8, 6, sorry. 9, 8, 6 for the mana base seems good to me. We will call it a deck here. Alright, here's a look at our final deck list for today. We're on a Teamer aggro deck. We've got a lot of big beef at the top end of the curve and a decent curve of creatures just by having so many morphs. Because of the morphs, we get to slam creatures down on turn 3 consistently while having turn 5 threats to flip up, turn 6 threats to try to finish the game. So a lot of great stuff to do with our mana and a lot of creatures that are hopefully just going to be large enough to take over the board and be bigger than anything our opponent's doing. We've got some pretty great interaction in the non-creature slots in this deck. We've got a Force Away and a Crippling Chill to slow down our opponents and give us the time to get to our higher mana values for our gigantic threats. We've got a Savage Punch, an Arc Lightning, and an Arrow Storm to clear out some creatures, and a couple of these are also flexible. The Arrow Storm could be shot at our opponent's face to finish them off. The Arc Lightning could potentially kill 2 creatures with this one card, and the Savage Punch can clear out a blocker while also getting extra damage in with that +2/+2. So really great interaction here, as well as really great top end with the big bomb Sagu Mauler, and a lot of beef with Woolly Loxodons, Snowhorn Riders, Riverwheel Aerialists. Looks like a pretty great, pretty consistent deck today. It's got an excellent mana base. We took a bunch of duels and a Triome in like pack 1, and that let us just take all the best non-land cards in future packs because we were just already set for life there after pack 1, pretty much mana-wise. So really nice stuff all around. Looks like a pretty consistent deck, but we'll see how it plays out as we head into the gameplay. Alright, here we are on the play for game 1. Definitely a slower hand, just a bunch of morphs. I was going to say a mountain of morphs, but I need to find better terminology, because whenever I say a mountain of stuff, it's kind of confusing in a card game where a mountain is an actual card. But just a plethora of morphs here. A pile, a stack, whatever you want to call it. Seeker of the Way is an incredible magic card, a super gross one. I'm just going to play our worst morph here, because it's probably going to get like debilitating injured or something, so they buff the Seeker, hit us for 3 and gain 3. This card just has excellent stats for the mana cost. Ooh, that's somehow feels even worse. They just play a Chief of the Scale and make the Seeker a natural 2/3. So they don't even have to play a spell to get in there. Plus the Chief of the Scale is a natural 2/3 as well, so we can't even attack into it. Not looking like a particularly great start for us. Oh no, they got both the Chiefs. They got the co-CEOs. Chief of the Scale and Chief of the Edge running the business together. This really looks like some kind of trick, but if I don't get blocking here soon, I'm taking so much damage. We go down to 14. Next turn, they're attacking for like 9. I guess at least next turn, I've got the mana to flip up either Morph, so we can double block and then like flip a Morph up in response if that works. I'm gonna not block there because the combat trick would be so miserable. Wow. All 4 of these are like premium pack 1 pick 1 uncommons. We are getting hosed to start this draft off. This game is not looking particularly winnable for most decks. I mean, like, a deck that has end hostilities could win by board wiping them, but that's really about it. I don't think this is really an issue with our deck and more an issue with how insane their curve is here. Try to do this, I guess. And really hope they don't have interaction. At this point, if they do have interaction, we're screwed. Okay, they don't. So we could have actually traded something off last turn. I really didn't want to get completely destroyed by 1 copy of Feat of Resistance. But I guess at some point you have to take those gambles, because if we don't take those gambles, we take so much extra damage like we have here, where we're already down to 8. Now they just have some graveyard spell. It's a delve spell. Okay, that's not terrible. Something like a Dutiful Return would have been even worse. So we know they don't have like combat tricks and stuff. They might have a sorcery speed removal spell to kill this rider, but I think we have to just Arc Lightning the Scavenger, so that if they don't have the removal, they're just not hitting us at all next turn. We try to stabilize from there. Yeah, I could alternatively just cast the Mistfire Weaver, but then they just like removal spell the Weaver and get in the sky anyway. I guess at least they removal spell the Weaver instead of the Rider, but this plays way better if they don't have removal. So if I get... Perfect. I was going to say, if I get 6 mana, I can cast another 5/5, or I can play the Weaver face down to get a hexproof trick. We are, like, confident they don't have removal in hand right now, so I think I slam down another Rider, and then I play a face down Weaver, because we don't need to be able to flip up a Weaver until they have the removal, so we can give them 1 extra draw step here to draw into it. Oh my god, what a draw. That might not be the draw. They might have just waited until they had more warriors on board. But yeah, that's filthy. We obviously can't block the Krumar here because it's just going to first strike eat a Snowhorn Rider. This way we at least trade with both those creatures and try to stay stable. Well, stay stable. We're not really stable at all. We try to get stable here. Have to Arrow Storm this Krumar, because if I play either of these, it's just going to first strike them away. And that's not to mention that we would just die to a removal spell if I play the Summit Prowler. If I play the Mistfire Weaver, I could play it and then they could try to removal spell it. I could flip it up, give it hexproof, but then again, I just chump block because of the first strike. Stop drawing spells! This is not good. Our opponent has to miss for us to stabilize. So, fingers crossed they do miss on some of these draws soon. No way. Oh my god, that's terrible. Yeah, it's hexproof and not shroud, so I can't make it so their creature can't be targeted by a molting snakeskin. Plus, I can only target creatures I control anyway. Just thought I'd double check and see if I had any chance here. Yeah, opponent does not miss, and we probably die. Preemptive regenerate. Fair enough. I mean, they know we have to block here. And that's dead. None of these are flyers. I can't sacrifice the Highland Game. That is daubers. So, unfortunately, going to start things off 0-1. Just an incredible curve from our opponent, really. Seeker, both of the Chiefs. That got us real bad. could have had another turn there if we had blocked more aggressively, more quickly there, instead of trying to play around a combat trick. But that'd just be one more draw step to try to find a way to kill a regenerating flyer, so I think there's only like one card in our deck that maybe gets us there. If we hit the Force Away, the bounce spell, we can get rid of the Snake Skin, and even then we'd have to hit that and then hit another flying blocker, so rough position to be in even if we had that extra turn. Here we are now for game 2. Pretty great curve. Heir of the Wilds into Alpine Grizzly should be sweet. Just immediately attacking for 3 damage on turn 3. They probably just play like a 2-2 Morph and we can attack right past it. Alright, seeing a Monastery Swift Spear means they might be a little more aggressive than we're giving them credit for. I guess by the time this is attacking, they still only have 2 mana, so they can't even play a Morph. They can't play a 3-drop. They probably play like a 2 mana 2-1, maybe with a raid trigger. Maybe an Einok Bondkin or something that can get counters. Leaping Master. Alright, it's a creature that can jump into the sky. I think we're pretty fine with our opponents choosing to lose both these creatures to the Heir of the Wilds, so I'm going to send it in. 2-for-1 trade's fine. Got that Sagu Mauler for late game. That's going to be pretty nasty. Probably try to draw a card off this Force Away looking for lands. Maybe discard the Riverwheel Aerialists just to find more mana to get to the Sagu Mauler. They are going to take the trade. That's fine. Heir of the Wilds has great abilities, but a 2-for-1 is a 2-for-1. We spent 2 mana to kill their 1-drop and their 2-drop. That's still excellent work done by the Heir of the Wilds. Abzan Falconer is the play. That's a pretty excellent card. I am very okay with trading into that, so I'm just going to send in and see what happens. All of their Outlast cards that are getting counters on them are now going to have flying, and it can just buff itself and give itself flying, so it is a very excellent card. Could absolutely drop a Sagu Mauler, but I really don't want to get it like Arc Trailed or something here, so I'm just going to hold up a Force Away. Hope they like Outlast onto the Falconer, and then we Force Away during their end step. Draw a card, discard an Aerialists for the 6th land, hopefully. Yeah, that was not smart. I need to get better at playing around raid. When we saw our opponent go to combat without outlasting yet, we probably should have bounced the Falconer so they couldn't cast any raid cards. Yeah, Timely Hordemate. This isn't terrible for us. It's just not ideal. We could have bounced the Falconer and they just do no raid for the turn. Now I kind of want to just hold on to the Force Away still. Alright, yeah, now we've guaranteed got the 6 mana for Sagu Mauler and Riverwheel Aerialists. I guess I don't have to draw and discard, but I still probably should when I cast the Force Away. Because I could always draw, like, something better than Riverwheel Aerialists. I guess at this point in the game, there's not much in our deck that is better than a giant flyer. Send in a Leaping Master, send in a Hordemate. If we can prolong this game long enough, we can definitely win off of these beefy cards. So I will take the trade down a 4-2 into a 3-2. Still relatively comparable in size. And with these cards, I want all 3 of these, so I'm not that convinced that I need to draw and discard a card, so I'd rather hold this up to be able to do it in the end step. Okay, Warname Aspirant, which is going to have flying because of the Falconer, and now the Falconer is a 3-4 flying. So we bounce one of these. I think I bounced the Falconer. Just more mana for them to recast it, and it also costs the mana to get the +1/+1 counter. Alright, let's try to lock in. I mean, I'm taking 5 damage in the sky next turn if they cast a Falconer and jump the Leaping Master up. We need to start trying to outrace them. Let's just play the Mauler and start bashing. I could play the Aerialists so that I know I can block the Flyers, but if they have just a decent white removal spell, like exile a creature with 3 toughness or better, then that turn's going to be really bad for us. If they have Active Treason, that'd be horrible. And Active Treason has been kind of popular for some of the aggro decks that I've played against. Alright, they are doing just maximum damage, racing us here. Drop a Falconer, send the Leaping Master into the sky. We've got to race. The Mauler's not going to be able to block if they jump things into the sky, so we bash it in there, put them down to 11, drop the Aerialists, and just cross our fingers that they don't have the removal for it or the Active Treason. If they don't, we probably win, but if they do, we probably lose. It's all down to them not having interaction that can deal with it. Hopefully just like red removal spells, like Arc Trail for 3 damage. Even if they have the Arrow Storm, which raids into 5 damage, they're probably going to try to shoot our face with that rather than the Aerialists. Because we're getting close to dead to an Arrow Storm. This is kind of looking like an Arrow Storm. It could be a damaging removal spell to finish off the Aerialists, like an Arc Trail. We obviously just kill the biggest creature that we can. Trumpet Blast, okay. That would be the one card that kills our flyer. There you have it. Well, that's disappointing. I think that was still the best block we could have done because there's so many other cards that punish us more for going for the other blocks. Like Arrow Storm and stuff. Specifically Trumpet Blast, though, is the only card that kills the Aerialist. If I make exactly that block, but not the other ones. What a bummer. Alright. 0-2 to start it off. I do not think this deck deserves that, but it certainly happens. Things are not lining up well for us. Round 1 opponent just had an incredible curve, and that round 2 opponent with the perfectly timed Trumpet Blast really gets us. We could have certainly played that game better if we had Force Awayed to stop the raid. That would have slowed them down a little bit. And then if I had just been omnipotent and found out that they had exactly Trumpet Blast, playing around the Trumpet Blast would have given us one more turn. Although I don't think it would have, right? Because we ended that game with 3 life. So realistically, even if I played around the Trumpet Blast and I kept the Aerialists on board, we'd be down to 2, and then they hit us with one of their 2-power flyers and we die anyway. I don't know, I guess the Falconer technically doesn't have flying, so we had like a turn there if I didn't attack, but then we're not killing them. Yeah, I kind of forgot Falconer didn't have flying anymore. I guess I should have stuck around for one more turn. But it was not a winning position unless we top decked, so it was still like a 95% to lose game. Oh, we're chilling. Next turn, a Summit Prowler or a Bear's Companion if we hit an island. We'll let our Heir of the Wilds get some really good attacks in. Unless they drop a 3-power creature. Yeah, no. Heir of the Wilds with that Death Touch is going to trade into 2 cards. Oh, well, there's a 3-power creature. Secret Plans, flip up Mystic of the Hidden Way is excellent value for our opponent. Okay, that is not a blue source. That's starting to look real awkward here for the Bear's Companion and the Sagu Mauler. And flip up our first striker. What's the other one again? Oh, the Loxodon. Yeah, I think I'd rather just play a Summit Prowler than flip up the first striker. Wow. That's actually perfect here. What a day. We're just gonna 0-3. Just running into the perfect cards here from our opponents. Yeah, that's not a blue source. This is a gross day of Magic. Send in a Summit Prowler. Trade into the 4/4. Opponent gets great 2-for-1 value from their Bear's Companion out of their 4-color deck while we're sitting here with the uncastable one. I did cut a blue source for another red source, but we needed the second red here with the Summit Prowler. Maybe another blue source instead of the 9th green would have got us there. Oh my god, they have the Trail of Mystery Secret Plans deck, so they just have immense value that we're never breaking through. They draw 2 cards out of every morph they play. They play the morph and they draw a land, they flip the morph and they draw another card. Things are starting to look real close to unwinnable, and we're still not finding the blue source, which is very bad. Trading a tracker into both of their cards is probably fine. If they want to go for a block here. Alright, yeah, I would rather trade the tracker into that than the, This is kind of sad, but I think I need to guarantee that if I hit the blue source, I'm flipping a bigger threat than the rider, so I'm putting the big one at risk here. Lost my train of thought there on what I was saying previously, my bad. They've got 6 mana up, they can flip basically any morph in the game now. Well, that flips my Loxodon at least, I guess. Whenever they flip anything up, it gets +2/+2 till end of turn 2. So this is going to eat anything. They've got 5 mana. It's probably like the 5/5 trample or something, but that turns into a 7/7 and just eats our Loxodon. We also don't block it well. I guess we have to make them have it here. Because we need to keep pressure on. We're dead in 3 turns to the Mystic alone. Alright, prove that it is a 5/5. If it isn't a 5/5, it's not going to work. If it's smaller than a 5/5, we'll eat it. It has to be exactly a 5/5. Oh, a 5/2 works. It's got to be 5 powers, what it has to be. Yep, draw a card and trade's pretty great for our opponent. At least it was a trade, though, and they didn't get to just, like, keep it around and beat us down with it. Yikes, that's 5 unblockable damage. They cast a single non-creature spell and we're dead. That is surprising. Maybe they've got another combat trick for lethal here? Or a burn spell for lethal? They must. Say, there's probably no way, if they don't have like a burn spell to just shoot me in the face, yeah, that they would block with the flyer that's threatening lethal with any non-creature. Alright, well, that was a really disappointing run for this deck. I think this deck was infinitely better than it played. I think the only thing we really could have done, I don't think we played terribly either. Like, round 2, certainly, we didn't play ideally. In round 1, there's like one thing we could have done. So round 1, there were just minor edges to be gained in a couple of these games that were highly unlikely to change the outcome. So game 1, we could have traded into one of their attacking creatures earlier rather than trying to play around the combat trick, that would have bought us basically one more turn to try to top deck into something. But because they had regenerate on their flyer at that point anyway, that extra turn would have needed to hit exactly Crippling Chill or Force Away to do basically anything. Otherwise, we would still just die. And we would have had to hit one of those into then hitting the Aerialists. And Crippling Chill would specifically just buy us more time, so we would literally have to be able to force away to get rid of their regenerating thing, and then also hit the Aerialists. So I guess we had 2 outs in our deck at all in game 1, and we could have bought ourselves one more turn to get to those 2 outs. So still highly, highly unlikely to have been able to turn that game around. But we could have played it better and had that tiny extra chance. Game 2, we technically weren't dead on board yet because Falconer didn't have flying. So I had to stop attacking, so I wasn't going to be getting any damage in anymore. But I had no flyers in hand and no removal in hand, so we could have bought one extra turn because they would have just leaped the Leaping Master, put us down to 1, and activated the Falconer, and then probably play another creature to help themselves not die, in which case the only way we win is maybe a top deck Aerostorm would have stacked into enough damage. I don't remember. Probably not. Or actually, I guess if we played another creature, it probably would. Yeah, if they tapped out and didn't play any blockers, then top deck Aerostorm could have got them. Otherwise, like, they would have 2 flyers on board if they tapped out. They would have had a Leaping Master and the Falconer with the +1/+1 counter on it. So drawing an Aerostorm or an Arc Lightning or a Savage Punch or a Crippling Chill or a Force Away or any of those cards wouldn't save us at that point against the 2 flyers after they outlast the Falconer. So it again was incredibly unlikely to have changed the outcome, but we didn't play it correctly. So there were things we could have done, but it's not like there were things that we could have done that would have guaranteed changed our record. They would have just given us like a 1% higher chance of winning, which is still massively low. This is just an 0-3, and it was likely to be that way regardless of how we played, although there were still plays to learn from. The other one in game 2 was bouncing when they chose to go to combat to stop raid. The problem with that is because they don't have to outlast in their first main phase, they could always just like go to combat to pretend that they really want to raid and then still just outlast the Falconer in main phase 2. So I don't know if that was like a massive punch, not bouncing the Falconer so they couldn't raid that turn, but it obviously didn't play super well. If we did bounce it, they'd just recast it that turn, and we would have bought ourselves some more time for sure. So that could have definitely changed the game. Yeah, I think that was definitely, I think, more impactful than accidentally conceding a turn early. Like, we gave up on our like 1% chance to win the game by forgetting that the Falconer didn't have flying in the end of that game. But if we had bounced the Falconer, obviously we couldn't have known that it was the like really good, like get 6 power on the board kind of raid card. But if we had bounced the Falconer there, they would have had 2 power to attack us with the next turn instead of like 8 that they ended up with. So that would have really slowed them down. So that much more could have changed the outcome. Yeah, maybe we could have been 1 and 2 right now if we had Force Away to stop raid, now that I think of it. Yeah, I'll give credit to that line for sure. That would have vastly changed the outcome of that game because they had probably the best raid trigger they could have had on that turn 4. So playing around the raid would have played out really, really well for us. Again, not an egregious mistake with the information we had at the time, but panned out super poorly for us. Okay, 0 and 3. Could have been 1 and 2. I'd give us like a 50-50 in that game had we went for the Force Away on the Falconer. So we could have definitely reasonably been at 1 and 2 if we played perfectly, but even at 1 and 2, then we'd have to win so many games in a row to get this deck to the win rate I think it deserves. Just a rough draft all around. Don't think the deck's bad at all. I think it just ran into some really good curves from our opponent and some perfectly timed draws and plays from our opponents. It happens. First 0-3 in a long time, and it's a pretty disappointing one. I thought this deck was pretty cool, pretty fun. First time playing some big teamer beef in a little while over just some of the more Mardu aggro kind of decks. And it really didn't pan out for us. But that is gonna end today's video. As always, I'd like to thank my patrons and YouTube members for their support, as well as you for watching the video. If you enjoyed this video and you're interested in seeing more, you can always like, comment, and subscribe to tell the YouTube algorithm to send you some more in your recommended feed. If you'd like to catch me live, you can check out the Twitch channel in the link in the description below, and if you'd like to support the channel directly, you can check out the Patreon link in the description below. But other than that, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon for some more Magic Arena.